Hello friends, how are you? Welcome to Japan Study Center. Today we are going to see the chapter of science and technology. And what is our topic today? Today we discussion most important chapter here, our environment. Class 10 cbse ncert here. You know that is an important chapter for the environment. And our questions here, define the environment, various explanation here. You know that first of all understand you what is environment. The environment is the most important point here. And other factors also important, but first of all understand you environment. The biotic and abiotic factor which surrounding any living organism is a consider as its environment. You know that this is a clear environment here. Biotic and abiotic factor which is surrounding any living organism is a consider as its environment. It can be generally defined as the community of organisms living in the particular environment and physical element in that environment with which they are interact. That's important here. Generally defined as the community of organism living in a particular environment and there are physical element in the environment with the interact to the each other. And then here we often use the word environment. That's important point here. We often use the word of environment. The environment can be defined as the physical and biological world whereon organism lives here. And literally speaking on organism, immediate surrounding is a constant, it is the environment and which includes both biotic or biotic component around him. That is the use for the word of environment. Next point here, the effects of human activity on the environment. That's the most important point here. The effect of human activity on the environment. You know that any types of change that people make in our environment affect the animal, plants and the land. That's important point here. That the change that people make in our environment affect their animal, plants and the land. And some change are helpful and some may be harmful to the environment. That's important here. The changes are helpful, there is a very less amount, but the harmful is environment, there is a large amount here. And clearing land on farming, construction of home, road and shopping center is helpful to the people. But animal habitats and plant may be destroyed in this activity here. And cleaning of land may be result in a soil erosion and the eventual is the loss of topsoil here. That is the activity of the effective for the environment. The next question arrive here. What is the ecosystem? Explain. You know that there is a very explanation for here. What is the ecosystem? And explain there. On the ecosystem is defined as the cultural and functional unit of the biosphere. You know that is an important definition here. On the ecosystem is defined as a structural and functional unit of the biosphere. It is a comprised of living organism and there are non-living environment that interact by mean of food chain and biogeochemicals and cycle resulting in the energy flow. The energy flow of biotic diversity and the maternal cycling to be from stable self-supporting system. You know that is an important point here. The ecosystem is defined as the structural and functional unit of the biosphere. And that's an important point. There is a living, non-living and living things here environment that interact by the means of food chain and the biogeochemical cycles resulting in the energy flow and biotic diversities and the material cycling to be form a stable self-supporting system here. Green plant is a capture about 1% of the solar energy incident on the earth and carry out the process of photosynthesis. You know that is an important point here. Green plants capture about only 1% of the solar energy. The incident of the urge to be carry out the process of photosynthesis. A part of this trapped energy is used by the plants in the performing their metabolic activities, and some energy is the release as a heat into the atmosphere. The remaining energy is a chemical energy stored in the plants as a photosynthetics production. That's important. The remaining energy is a chemical energy stored in the plants as the photosynthetic products here. When these green plants are eaten by of the herbivores and chemical energy stored in the plants is transferred to these animals. This animal is a herbivorous is utilize some of the energy for the metabolic activities here, and some energy is released as a heat while the remaining energy is stored in their body. And this process of energy transfer is repeated till top of carnivorous. In a ecosystem, transfer of energy flow to 10% low. 10% low, there is a most important question for the next year. And only 10% of energy is a transfer to be each trophical level from to the low trophical level. That's important point here. The 10% low is the most important. The only 10% of energy is a transfer to the each tropical level from to lower tropical level to other. And nearly 90% of energy is the loss when it's a move from one tropical level to the next. That's important explanation here. That's important for the 10% low here. And the most important point, the lake considered to be natural ecosystem. You know that that's an important point. The lake considered to the a natural ecosystem. Lake is on the ecosystem where living organisms grow, reproduce, and interact among to each other, as well as the biotic component and carry other activities in nature is himself without any human interference, and therefore it is referred to as a natural ecosystem. That's the most important example for the here lake. Lake is the most important natural ecosystem because a lake is ecosystem where a living organism grow, reproduce, and interact among to the each other without a human interference. And there is most important here biomass. Biomass is the total amount of living or organic matter in an ecosystem at any time. That's important here biomass here. Biomass is the total amount of living or organic matter is on the ecosystem at any time. Next question arrive here. A very explanation of the biotic and abiotic source. You know that that's an important point here. Biotic and abiotic. You know that is important here. Biotic. First of all, is a here biotic mean. What is here a biotic? The biotics here, the term biotic is formed by the combination of two terms. Bio. Bio means life, and eyes mean alike. Mean a life like. This term mean a life like and in the related to the all the living entire present on a ecosystem. That's an important point here. Biotic. Biotics mean to the life like means living organism here. The next point here, biotic factor. You know that biotic factor is important here. Biotic factor related to the all the living things in the ecosystem. That's important. Biotic factors related to the all the living things in the ecosystem and their presence and their biological byproduct affected the compositions of on the ecosystem. Biotic factors refer to all living organisms from animal and human to plants, fungus and bacteria. That's important here. The all living organism here, animals, humans, plants, fungus and bacteria. The interaction between to the various biotic factors are necessary for the reproduction of each species and to be fulfill essential requirement like a food, etc. This is a biotic factor here. An example of biotic factor here. The example of biotic resources include all the living component present on the ecosystem, and this include a producer, consumer, and decomposer and detrivores. That's an important point here for the exam view here. And the next here, a biotic factor. Let's see a biotic factor here. The next here, abiotic factor. You know that abiotic factor here, abiotic factor refer to all non-living. You know that abiotic factor refer to the all the non-living is a chemical and physical factor present in the atmosphere and hydrosphere and the lithosphere. That's important is the non-living things here like sunlight, air, precipitations, minerals, and soil are some example of abiotic factor. That's important here. Sunlight, air, precipitations, and minerals and soil are some example of biotic factor here. And these factors have a significant impact on the survivals and reproductions as species in the ecosystem. That's important. And for instance, without any adequate amount of sunlight, is autotrophic organism may not be able to survive. That's important here. For instance, without any adequate amount of sunlight, autotrophic organism may be not be able to survive. And when this organism eventually is a die, it will be create a shortage of food for a primary consumers. And this effect is a cascades up to the food chain and affecting to every organism. Consequently, it's a lead to an imbalance in ecosystem. That's important here. The biotic factor is important, but the most important abiotic factor here. The abiotic factor is the primary sources here. There is a sunlight, air, and the precipitation mineral and the soil. There is a primary factor. That's important point for the exam view here. And some example of biotic factor like that. Abiotic Abiotic example of topical dependent on the types of ecosystem. That's important here. The types of depend on the types of ecosystem here. For instance, biotic component is the terrestrial ecosystem include air, weather, water, temperature, humidity, altitude, the pH level of soil, types of soil, and the more on. And biotic example is there is here aquatic ecosystem include of water, salinity, oxygen level, pH level and water flow rate and water depth and temperature. The next question arrive here. What is a food chain and food wave? You know that there is a very explanation here. Food chain and food wave here. The process of eating autotrophs by the herbivorous and herbivorous is began eating by the other animal is considered as a food chain. You know that is important. The process of eating autotroph by the herbivorous and herbivorous is began eaten by the other animals is considered as a food chain. You know that the show of your screen there is the most important for here a food chain. There is the here a grass is a take of the light of the sun and grasshopper eating to the grass and frog eating to the grasshopper and snake is eating for the frog and the eagle eating for the snake and the eagle is decomposed here on the soil and this processing is growth of other. There is a food chain here that's important for your screen. It is the activities are producer of relationship between the organism that eat the proceedings one and is eaten by the succeedings one. Transfer energy and the material as flow through the each other is ecosystem. Here energy is neither to create nor a destroyer. It's a flow from one level to other. Through the plant to the animals is a level. That's an important point here. There is energy flow here. There are energy neither we create nor we destroy. It's a flow from level to level through the plant to the animal level. And here component of food chain is an important point here. The various component of food chain include here plants, herbivorous, carnivorous, decomposer, and each of these face a different trophic level. That's important point for the exam view here. The next here is an important point arrive here, the food wave. That's important is the food wave here. There are food wave definition here, interconnected food chain from a food wave. That's important here, interconnected food chain from a food wave. That's important definition here. You know that there is an analysis of picture. That's important. There is a show of food wave here. The food wave is starting for the producer. Producer has here is a berry also. That is here a berry eaten by the butterfly, ladybirds, and red robin. That's important. And there is other is eaten here. Dragonfly is eaten to the ladybird, and the other is a butterfly eaten to the frog, and that's eaten by the snake, and snake there is eaten here a eagle. That is interconnected for the each other. There is a food wave, and otherwise the producer of here a grass and eaten by to the rabbit and grasshopper, but grasshopper eaten by to frog, and frog there is eaten a snake, and that is a food wave here. And other side is a rat hair eaten to the others, and there's a rabbit eaten to the fox. You know that that is the interlinking for the each other. There is a one animal eaten to the many types of animal. That is the food wave here. Food wave determine to the how animal and plants are interconnected by different paths. It's when to the numerous food chain is connected to from some sort of network. That a network is a term as a food web. That's important. It is then to the numerous food chain connect to the form some sort of network. That a network is termed as a food web. Organism on their food web have one things to the common, which is the requirement of energy to the carry out further activities. That's in common here. That is energy is a common. There is a energy is common for all organism because there are further activities. Food web are not a linear at all, and they are interlocking, and they do not operate is isolation. Next question arrive here. Define a ozone layer. Explain here. Ozone means ozone is a form of oxygen. Each ozone molecule is made of 3 oxygen atom. So it is a chemical formula is O3. There is a equation here. O2 plus O is equal to O3. There is ozone. Ozone here form of oxygen. But unlike oxygen, ozone is a poison gas. The O3 is here. Oxygen, ozone is a poison gas. And increase it is a concentration at the ground level is a harmful. But in the stratosphere, where ozone exit naturally, it is a block out the sun as a ultraviolet ray, and it is a lifesaver. You know that ozone is here a poisoning gas, but there is a most important here a block of naturally a sun as a ultraviolet ray and save the life. That's important here. The ozone layer loss are more in a cold region. You know that that's important here. The ozone layer loss are more in a cold region. Ozone loss is a more served in the world as a coldest regions because of cloud in there is a stratosphere known as a polar stratospherical clouds here, and they provide a surface on which there are chemical reaction that result in their destruction of ozone take place. That's important here. The ozone layer loss of more in cold region. That's important point. And the after effect of ozone depletion here, ozone depletions will be create holes in the stratosphere, which will be allow there is a UV ray to enter the earth. The UV ray that is a rich the skin can causing a destroy effect. You know that the UV ray is the most harmful gas here that destroy for the crops, and there is the skin cancer causing here, and also is the motia bind here. But next question arrive here, that's important for the exam view. You know that's important. In the flowing food chain, plant provide to the 500 joule of energy to rats. How much energy will be able to hawks from snake? You know that that's important question here. The examiner here provides here a energy of 500 joule of rat. That's important point here. The 500 joules of the rat, and how much energy will be available to be hawks from snakes. That's important. In an ecology, an ecosystem, only 10% of energy is transferred from one tropical level to the next. I have already understand the ecosystem only 10% of energy is a transfer from one tropical level to the next. So 10% low as the rest of dissipated into the environment. And therefore, if a plant beginning produce a 1 ST tropical level, a transfer of 500 joule of energy to rat, the second tropical level that rat would be transfer only 50% joule of energy for the snake. And third tropical, which is a turn, will be transfer only 5 joule of energy to hogs. That's important. And fourth last tropical level is a food chain. That's important. There is a hogs from a snake. There are 50 to 5% energy transfer here. That's important here. And let's analyze here. You know that there is a most important example reversible processing here. First of all, see here a 500 for the rat, but other case is a difference here. There is a 100 joule of energy available to be a lion. You know that in the flowing food chain, 100 joule of energy available to be a lion. For the first is here a plant, deer and lion. As for a 10% low of flow of energy is ecosystem, only 10% of energy is received by the next topic label here. Hence, in the given food chain, if 100 joule of energy available to lion, the plants are produced have 10,000 joule of energy available to them. You know that's important. 100 joule for the lion. There is a reversible processing here. 10 is multiplied by 100 means 1000 for the deer, and 1000 multiplied by 10, that is the plants is here 10,000 joule available for the plants here. You know that is a reversible processing here. The next question arrive here, give an example to the illustrate that is a indiscriminate use of pesticide may be result in the degradations of the environment. You know that is an important question for the exam view here. Indiscriminate use of pesticide may be result in the degradation of environment. That's an important question here. Pesticides are the chemical used to kill a plant and animal pest. You know that is important. Pesticides are chemicals used to kill plant and animal pest. They are non-biodegradable and toxicant here. There is a non-biodegradable. For example, excessive of use of DDT resulted in the reduce of population of the fish eating birds. That's important here. The use of DDT is the result of the reducing the population of fish eating of birds. And DDT is accumulated in such a bird through the food chain. It interferes with the egg shell formation. There is a interfere with the egg shell of formation. The cell began thin broke due to the weight of the bird during to the incubation, and hence there are population decline here. But next question arrive here, this is most important here. Energy flow in a food chain is away unidirectionally. Justify this statement. That is an important question here. Energy flow in a food chain is always unidirectionally here. Justify this statement. That's important. Explain how the pesticide enter to food chain and subsequently get into our body. That's important here. Some harmful non-biodegradable chemical like a pesticide, DT. That's a non-biodegradable chemical here. Enter the bodies of organism through the food chain and get concentrated at the each tropical level. And this phenomenon is called biomagnification, yeah, biological magnification here. That's important here. For example, in a food chain operating in a pond, river, lake, the water contains a small amount of there is 0.02 ppb mere part per million of harmful pesticide here. And DDT, when this water consumed by the phytocotton, the phytoplant cottons and zooplankton cotton, the concentration of this chemical increased to 5 ppm here. A fish feeding on this is accumulate 240 ppm here, and bird and human beings on this fish were found to contain 1600 ppm of these chemicals. Thus, there is an increasing in the concentration of the chemical at the each tropical level. Next question arrive here. This is the most important. What do you mean by the food chain? The number of tropical level in the food chain is limited. Give the reason to justify this statement. You know that that's the most important question here. What is mean by the food chain? The number of tropical level in there is a food chain is limited. Give a reason to justify this statement. That's important here. The sequence of living organism in a community in which one organism consume or feeds upon to another organism to transfer food energy is called food chain. That's important. The sequence of living organism is a community in which one organism consumed or feed upon to another organism to transfer food energy is called a food chain. The very step in a food chain at which the transfer of food or energy take place is called tropical level. That is the important. The very step is a food chain at which a transfer of food energy take place is called trophic level. In fact, in a food chain, each step representing an organism from a tropical level. That's important here. The number of tropical level in a food chain are limited because at the each tropical level only 10% of energy is utilized. That's important. 10% energy of utilized for the maintenance of organism, which occurred at that tropical level, and there is remaining large portions is lost as heat. As a result, organism at each tropical level pass on lesser energy to the next tropical level than they receive. The longer the food chain, the lesser is the energy available to be final member of food chain. Food chain generally consists of 3 or 4 tropical level because beyond that energy available to the next organism will be too small and insufficient to sustain the life of the organism. That's important here. You only 10% energy utilized here and maintenance of organism here, and the remaining large portion is lost as a heat. But next question arrive here. That's important. Industrialization has adversely to the deteriorated with the environment. That's important. Give the 4 reasons support this statement. Industrialization has adversely is a deteriorated the environment. That's important here. But here Industrialization has deteriorated our environment in a flowing way here. The industrialization has deteriorated our environment. This is important. Rapidly industrialization has increasing the demand of more land area for the setting up new factories. And this demand is began to fulfill by the clearing up to the forest area. And deforestation is one of the major cases of the ecological imbalance, biodiversity, and loss of ecosystem instability. That's important. Rapidly industrialization has increasing the demand of more land area for the setting of the new factories, and that's the clearing up to the forest area. And deforestation is one of the major cases of the ecological imbalance. There is a major problem here, or ecological imbalance here, and diversity loss and ecosystem instability here. Industry release of various harmful gas in the environment which have polluted the air. That's right here. Industries release various harmful gas in the environment which have polluted the air. And this gas, when inhaled by the people around, causes of various respiratory disease in them. A lot of influence and liquid waste is a discharge from various industries, and which is a mostly dumped into the nearly water body. There is a dump it into the nearly water bodies here, and this case is water pollution. Polluted water cases of death of various aquatic organisms, and consumptions of this polluted water or cases various disease in a human. Humans, there is important. The soil waste released from the factories in the dumped or open land and not treated properly to the ensure their proper decomposition. There is always led to be land pollution that is a degraded quality of soil and also causing of various kind of disease. But next question arrive here. This is the most important for the exam view here. State the 10% law. That's important question here. State the 10% law. Explain with example how to energy flow through the different topical level. You know that's important questions here. The state of 10% law. As we know that only 10% of energy is a transfer from the first topical level to the next, and 90% of energy lost their heat to their surrounding. Let's just understand with an example. You know that simply language, according to the 10% law, only 10% of energy is received by the next topical level. That's important here. There is 10% energy of transfer from to the first topical level to the next, but 90% is a waste here. 90% energy waste here from a heat. If the energy available at a second topical level T2 is a 2000 joule of energy, so the 20 joule of energy will be at the fourth level here. You know that the T4. Other example here, let us assume that is a plant produce have a 10 joules of energy. According to the 10% law, only 1 joule of energy will be available for a transfer to the next topical level, that are herbivorous deer. And 10% of 1 joule, that is 1.1 joule of energy, is available for the carnivorous lion. That's important example here. You know that I repeat again, what is the 10% law here? The 10% law here, so only 10% of energy is received by the next topical level. That's important questions here. But next question arrive here, that's important. And the last question here, write a 2 negative effect of used of plastic bag on the nature's environment. The natural environment here, and suggest alternative that can be used instead to the plastic bag. You know that's an important question. Write a 2 negative effect of used of plastic bag on the naturally environment. The natural environment is an important effect of their plastic bag here. You know that there are two negative effects of plastic bag used in environment. First of all here, a plastic bag are non-biodegradable material that bacteria do not be break down on the nature. As a result, they cannot be denatigate and remain in the ecosystem for a long time and harming the fertility and quality of the soil. That's important here. The plastic is not a biodegradable material and his result cannot be a disintegrate as remain in the ecosystem for the long time, harming the fertility is equality of the soil. And the next year, plastic bag close is drains which is causing the water logging and the mosquito breeding which spread a number of disease. That's important. And the alternative to the polythene bag is the jutes and cloth bag. There is a alternative source and importance here. Polythene bags are jute and cloth bag here. That's important here. Technique for getting rid of waste generated in our home. That's important here. Sorting a garbage into the biodegradable and non-biodegradable categories here. That's important here. Sorting of garbage into the biodegradable and non-biodegradable categories. A manure can be made from the biodegradable waste here. Non-biodegradable garbage needs to be dumped into place where municipal authorities may be pick them up and properly and scientifically dispose of them. And utilized to empty bottle and jars to be stored of food and other stuff. That's important use here. And that's a technique of getting rid of the waste generated in our home. This topic was till this. We will be do their next topic in the next part. If you like it, then please like, share, subscribe, and share the video as much as possible. Do not think, subscribe and save in your mobile.